when we left off the other day, what we had was this block moving over towards a portal, and then it was teleporting over to here, and the whole point was that we were able to make a block loop around through the screen, or a loop from one place to another, and that's where we are right now. But maybe you don't always want to have it loop. It would be a lot cooler if, let's say, we had some sort of a game with a ball and the ball was bouncing around the inside of the screen. So that's what we're going to do today. So I'm going to get rid of these rectangles that we had drawn, and instead I'm going to draw a circle. Now remember, the code for a circle is pygame.draw.circle, and then I'm going to draw it to my window. And next thing is I need the color. I'm going to make this blue. And the position of our block was always x comma y, and so I'm going to use x comma y again, those two variables that are keeping track of where I'm drawing my item. And next I need my radius, and let's say we have a radius of 20, and my width is going to be 0. So if I run this guy, oops, forgot to close off that bracket. So if I run this, you can see I've got this nice circle right here. It's got a radius of 20, which means it has a diameter of 40, and it's going to go over here, and because I haven't changed the rest of the code, it should pop up over in this spot. You can see it does. Okay. So next what I want to do is I want to say if my x equals the edge of the screen, so x equals width, then what do I want to do? Instead of going this way, I want to go back the other way. Now there's a problem here. If I put x minus equals 1 and I try to run it, let's just see what happens when it reaches the edge of the screen. So when I reach the edge, so my width is right here, so the middle of the circle, which is x comma y, as that reaches the middle, it gets stuck. And what's happening right now is I'm adding 1 to x, and I say when I get to the side of the screen, subtract 1 to x. And I go around and I come through my loop again and I add 1 to x, and then I say if it gets to the side of the screen, subtract 1 from x. Add 1 to x. If it's there, subtract 1. Add 1. If it's there, subtract 1. And I'm just doing adding and subtracting 1 constantly. So I could put subtract 2, and if I were to put that, then all it's going to do is it's going to jump back 2 pixels instead of 1. So the only time that we're going to be subtracting from x is actually when this has gotten to the side of the screen. So you can see it's kind of bouncing a little bit now. In fact, if I were to change this thing to subtract 20, well, let's just say 10. When it gets here, when it finally gets to the edge, it's going to go back 10, but then keep adding 1, and then back 10 and keep adding 1, back 10, keep adding 1. And so it's just going to be kind of stuck on that edge. See, it just wants to keep going to the right. So the way that we can get around this is we need another variable. And the variable that we need, I'm going to call it x speed. Another name for it could be x increment, and the short form for that could be x inc. So x speed equals 1. We are going to be moving over by 1 each time. Now instead of adding 1 to x, we want to add x speed to x. So we want to take our position and add the speed that we're going to it. So that's how fast we're going to be moving our circle over. So let's go ahead and try running this again. So you can see it's moving totally like normal, just like it was in all of the other cases. But the problem is going to be when we hit this wall, rather than just coming back 10 and then going to the right again, I want to start going to the left instead. So we can say when we get to the wall sideways, we don't want to change the position, we want to change the speed. So what we're going to say is x speed times equals -1. Now what that means is take the speed that we're going at, in this case speed is 1, so we're adding 1 to x, we're adding 1 to x, we're adding 1 to x, and when we get to the side, we're going to multiply the value of speed by -1, or we're going to change its sign. So 1 times -1 is -1. So now x speed is -1. And the next time we come through our loop, we're going to add to x -1. In other words, we're going to subtract 1. So let's go ahead and run it again. And when we finally get to the end, what we're going to do is we're going to multiply our speed by -1. Or in other words, we're going to just change the sign that speed is. And then it bounced off, and now it's headed to the left. Now we need to set up a condition so that if it comes over here and hits the left side of the screen, that it bounces back to the right. So if we get to the edge of the screen on the right hand side, but if we get to the edge of the screen on the left hand side, so let's say 0, x speed, again we'll just put times equals -1. So change the direction of this x speed. So this should be able to come over here, hit the wall, which is equal to width, multiply your speed by -1, so change the direction of your speed, and it'll come back, and when it gets to 0, it'll change the direction of speed again, and it should bounce back to the right hand side. So let's just wait and make sure that that actually ends up happening. Hooray, we're winning. Now you can see excuse me, that the bounces, it's bouncing in the middle, and that's because x is actually the very middle of our circle. See how it bounces in the middle there? That doesn't quite look right. The radius of our circle is 20, so when we get to the width -20, so if we're 20 before the width, the center of our circle will be 20 before the wall, which means the edge of our circle will be right at the wall, and it'll look like the ball's bouncing off of the wall. Same thing here. If x gets to 20, if it's 20 to the right of the left-hand wall, then that means that the center of our circle is 20 to the right of the left-hand wall, and since our radius is 20, then the edge of the circle will be right on the left-hand wall, and it'll look like it's bouncing. Let's go ahead and run it again, make sure that's working. So it's going to be coming over here. It should bounce, and we'll just have to be patient and wait for it. Or better yet, what I could do is I could move it by a faster speed. Maybe I'll do that next time. Hopefully you were watching and you saw that it bounced there. Let's make sure that it's bouncing real nice over here on this hand, on the left-hand side too. Here we go. That was a nice bounce as well. So it will just keep bouncing back and forth forever. Okay, but now we need the y to bounce. So in order to do that, we also need a y speed. And I'm going to set that equal to 1 as well. So the ball will be going over and down. And we need some if statements for that. So if y is equal to the height of our window, remember width and height, I declare them up here, and then I use those to size my window. So if I hit the height, then what I want to do is multiply my speed by -1. In other words, change the direction of the ball. Or if y is equal to 0, then reverse the ball as well. Now again, we don't want to know when the center of the circle is at the bottom of the screen. We want to know when the bottom of the ball is at the bottom of the screen. So when it's equal to the height -20, or when it's equal to 0 plus 20, so when it's equal to 20. Oh, and one other thing I need to add is I want to actually move my y value now. And I'm just going to gray this out for a second. So we're just going to check, make sure that it's working up and down. So it should be when the bottom of my circle hits the bottom of the screen, because it's when the center of my circle hits 20 above the bottom of my screen, and that worked perfectly. And when I want to say when the center of my circle hits 20 below the top of the screen, should bounce. So that's working great. So another thing we could do then is we could add the x in, and we can go ahead and run that. And now this ball, whether it's the x or the y, as soon as it hits an edge, what should happen is the ball should reflect. So you can see it bounce down there, and then it's going to bounce over to the left, and it's going to keep doing that. Now if I were to change my speeds up here to, let's say, 2, this should still work pretty good. Just the ball's going twice as fast because it's moving 2 pixels each time rather than 1. And you can see it's bouncing pretty nicely. Now what's going to happen if I change my speed to 3? So let's try it out. Change my speed to 3, so I'm just speeding it up a little bit more. Here's the ball coming down pretty fast, and it went right off the screen. Why? Well, because we're adding 3 each time, it never actually equaled the exact value of height minus 20. It was 1 or 2 off of that. So I need to say if it's greater than or equal to height minus 20, or if it's less than 20. So if I go down below this value, or if I go above this value, then turn the ball around. Same thing here. If I go past the right-hand wall, or if I go to the left of the left-hand wall. Let's try that again. You can see it's coming down here, and it looks like it's bouncing nicely now. And we can speed this thing way up. Let's make it 13. So that thing is bouncing around like crazy now, and it happens so fast, the ball might actually slightly go off the edge. See if I can grab it. There we go. See, the ball is actually going off the edge a little bit, and that's because it's gone past the amount that I wanted it to. But that's okay. It happens so fast, it looks to your eye like it's just bouncing off of the edge. So that's good enough for us.